Designers who make $100,000 a month selling a subscription for their design services is something almost unheard of, and it's possibly the holy grail for designers. You run your own solid business, you make a bunch of money, and you do it consistently so there's no ups and downs in your business. So how do you actually do it? In this conversation, Brett from DesignJoy, who's doing this right now, is going to share how. I'm super excited for this conversation. Let's do it. Hey, Brett, welcome to the channel. Thanks so much for coming by.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
All right. So I think I'm really excited about this conversation. I think what you've built is kind of, in a way, the holy grail for a lot of designers. And I would love to hear how you got to where you are. I've been really impressed with what you've built and how you've shared the struggles and the ups and the downs on Twitter. So let's get started with maybe where you are right now, and then try to backtrack and understand how you got to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, right now, I do run DesignJoy still by myself. So that is it's as a really quick introduction, it is just a design subscription service where clients do pay a subscription fee per month to access sort of unlimited number of design needs. And today, 5 years in, I continue to run the thing alone. I have a good number of clients that I work with every day, and yeah, I've gone through a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of highs and lows over the last 5 years trying to do this thing alone. But I'm in a better spot now than I think I've ever been. So
in terms
I guess that's the real quick snapshot.
Are you comfortable sharing in terms of? I saw this amazing graph that you shared of revenue on Twitter. Are you comfortable sharing how much you earn, or how many clients are you servicing right now?
Sure. Yeah. I actually couldn't tell you the exact number of clients. It's probably, I should have done some research before this, but it's probably in the realm of usually like 30 to 35 probably. And then last month I pulled 94 in net, 94,000 in net revenue. So yeah, that's
amazing. And just a little bit of context in terms of who the clients are. Where are you based from?
So I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Client base is really all over the world.
Got it. Are they not just Americans?
No, absolutely not. Australia, I mean, a lot of Europe. I would say it's probably like 30 to 40% overseas from the United States, and then the rest are here in the United States. So yeah, pretty much anybody and everybody.
Okay, fantastic. So now let's try to backtrack. Did you originally start, when you started DesignJoy, did you start with this model of design subscriptions, or like how did you got to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the nature of DesignJoy really hasn't changed since the day I launched it. I did launch as actually under a different name and eventually rebranded DesignJoy, but yeah, the model itself changed. Obviously, proficiencies and efficiencies have evolved since day one, but the model and the offering has pretty much remained the same. I did actually, I do one big piece to DesignJoy's Webflow work. I didn't launch with Webflow being sort of a packaged offer, but it's a big part of DesignJoy now. But other than that, yeah, it's really a mirror image of the day I launched.
Okay, so can you share a little bit about how you package it? You've mentioned you pay a fee, and then you get unlimited design. Like, what does that mean? How does that look like?
Yeah, I don't love using the word unlimited design, but it's sort of like what the market has adopted as being the case. But yeah, so essentially how it works is you have, companies like DesignJoy offer these plans. DesignJoy currently just offers one. I've evolved over the years from offering many to offering one. And then you essentially, once you have a subscription active, you get access to a design queue, and you can input as many requests into that queue as you want, and they're just worked through one by one. So you can't have multiple requests worked on at a time. It's just a one request at a time rule. And once that one's done, then we move on to the next one, and it just goes on from there.
Got it.
So
and how do you use a specific platform for that? Do you use Slack? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, I personally use Trello just that's the simplest tool that I could find that that clients already sort of know and love. And so yeah, everything is managed in there. All communication happens there. We don't connect with clients on Slack or Zoom or anything else outside of that sort of async, just commenting within Trello itself.
Got it. Okay, so to me, it's really interesting. When I used to freelance, I mainly packaged my service in terms of retainers. So, the clients knew they're getting a day or so from my day, and then they can package as much as would fit. But how do you set expectations with clients in terms of what they're getting? They put something in the queue. When is that going to be delivered, and so forth?
Yeah, that I would say that's really the number one hardest thing to manage within this model that is by nature very fluid. There aren't target dates or anything associated with requests. I generally give out like a rule of thumb that most requests are delivered in 2 days. I would say a typical request is, and I define a typical request different than maybe how you would define a typical request or another designer would. But for me, it's, it looks like a landing page. It looks like a branding concept, which would include logos and all that sort of stuff. That's generally done in about 2 business days.
You can deliver a
course,
branding. You can deliver a full branding or a full landing page in 2 days. That's fantastic. That's crazy.
So landing pages, yes. Branding concepts, obviously, there are a wide scope of size of branding concepts. So the one that I just consider just to be typical of me is a logo, color palette, typography selection, and how those sort of go together. And then obviously there can be subsequent parts after that are associated with the brand that isn't done within that 2-day period. But yeah, you could theoretically get a logo concept and everything else within about 2 days.
And do most clients that come, because eventually this is subscription and retainer are basically both are kind of like long-term relationships with clients. So usually, what do a typical clients look like? Do they come when they don't have anything and then you create whatever, a landing page or a brand for them, and then it's mainly maintenance? Or do they come, at what stage do they come to you? Like, what are some of the typical projects that you tackle?
Yeah, today it's a lot more companies that already exist and that are mature and are actually driving revenue for themselves. Before, for the first 3 or 4 years, it was a lot of indie hackers. It was a lot of just pre-revenue, companies trying to raise a seed round, didn't have anything. But today I would say it's a good mix of those that have just literally have an idea and need a designer to put their idea into pixels. But then there's also those sort of enterprise level companies too that already have existing websites and logos and just need it sort of either flushed out or carried through to other assets. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag at the moment.
Got it. And I know that the thing about subscription, or at least, tech companies, the way that they're growing exponentially or something like this is because, they're constantly adding new clients versus just turning around clients. And I think that's one thing that's interesting about your model. So did you get to where you are today by stacking up clients as time goes by? Or because I also saw in the graph that you shared that it was kind of like not flatline, but very slow growth for a while and then started to rapidly growth. So like what changed?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the graph that you're referencing, and it's on my Twitter, I think it was about a 3-year period or something like that. Yeah, it was the line was almost on the axis at the bottom, right? So it was pretty, and that really, it's worth noting. I mean, when I created DesignJoy, I mean, I still consider myself just a designer. I don't really consider myself or call myself an entrepreneur or anything beyond just a designer, because that's what honestly my passion, what I love doing. I don't really have a desire to do anything else. So when I created DesignJoy, I had that same philosophy where it was more of it was an easier way to enter the market than just entering the market as a freelancer. And creating a brand and entering the market that way just seemed like a more logical, easier decision for me. And then so I really had no intention of ever growing. So I had a full-time job for a long time. Actually, I had one till last October. So any kind of sort of income that just naturally came off of my initial launch is what I rode for like 3 years. I didn't really do any work to get clients or anything like that. So it was, it was under 10K a month, which to me at the time was a lot of money. It was way more money than I was making at my full-time job. And so I just let it ride. And then March of, when I think around the time COVID came into play is when things really took off. I don't know if it's directly related, but that's when you see the graph start to go way north pretty quickly. It wasn't anything that I did differently though. I don't think. Maybe I think I had a new website launch at the time, a refreshed brand, which sometimes can re-energize things a little bit. But other than that, it was just a natural occurrence.
Really interesting. So let's talk about that. You said you had a full-time job. Was that a full-time job as a designer or doing something else?
Yeah, full-time design job as a UX UI designer at just a corporate company. And
got it.
Yeah, I've had it the whole time I ran DesignJoy up until about.
And DesignJoy was running. You've mentioned that you thought it was easier to launch in this model versus a freelancer model. Why did you think that? Or
yeah, well, I mean, freelancers are kind of a dime a dozen now, and they're everywhere, and it's really difficult unless you just have a stellar portfolio to really stand out. I didn't have a stellar portfolio at the time, even when I launched DesignJoy. So I thought it just seemed, I don't know, it just seemed easier to me to go at it as DesignJoy than Brett Williams, right? Which no one knew and was just going to be yet another freelancer. And then also, it was a marketing play too, because I think the common consensus out there are agencies are reliable and do good work, but they're often slow and expensive. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have freelancers who are usually less expensive, more agile, but not as reliable. So I sort of it was a marketing play where I took the benefits of both and combined them into what is today DesignJoy, and got rid of the negatives from both as well. So yeah, I think I just thought it was going to be a much more fun play and had more of a chance of succeeding that way than anywhere else.
Do you remember who was your first client? Like how your first client got to you?
I don't remember my very first client. I do know how they got to me. I actually surprisingly do have a few clients who are with me, I would say within like month 1 or month 2 from 2017, which is cool. But I did a prototypical product hunt launch for DesignJoy. So the clients came pretty instantly. I would say that within the hour, I got clients. So, and ever since then, I never really had to put out any effort to get clients since then. So, yeah, that was how it happened.
Wait, I think I lost it. You've mentioned you've launched on Product Hunt. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you launched,
launched
your website on Product Hunt, and that's where you got a bunch of first clients.
That's right. Yeah.
Very interesting. Was this kind of like strategic move because you knew people looking for designers are there, or you just like Product Hunt yourself, or was it
a combination? I did like Product Hunt myself. It was a site that I bookmarked and visited every day. I mean, I'm a product geek, right? I'm a product designer, so I love products. But also I knew the audience there too. I don't mean to sound like this was like a super planned thing. Really, in a nutshell, this was a very ad hoc. I literally came up with the idea on a Saturday, built the website and webflow on a Sunday, and launched it that night at midnight. So it wasn't like I put a whole lot of forethought into this at all. But I knew that the Product Hunt community would probably accept it pretty well, because at that time, at least, there wasn't too many of these around. There was no one doing UX UI work and branding work. So I thought I'd have a good chance of succeeding there. And I did honestly moderately well. It wasn't even a huge success by Product Hunt standards, but I only needed a couple of subscriptions to be able to make a good living from it. So it was not too difficult.
God, and super interesting and honestly brilliant, because that's really where, tech people building stuff, starting companies, sometimes have budgets, are looking. So I think that's really brilliant. So you've mentioned at the start of COVID, things started to take off without you actively doing anything. Did you leave your job to focus on that full time? Like, how did that roll?
No, so I kept my job. It literally like 10x. I feel like within within that month. And you can see it on the chart. But no, I mean, it definitely threw some wrenches into my full-time job, because at that point I was actually kind of busy with my full-time job. I wasn't towards the tail end, hence why I kept it for so long. But no, I managed it quite well. It definitely got to some dicey points where demand for DesignJoy just kept growing and growing and growing, and it was a constant debate between my wife and I, like what the right decision is to do. To leave and go full time. But that was scary to me. I mean, I had created companies before, but I always had the luxury of maintaining my job doing them. So I wasn't eager to get rid of that security, because I really didn't know if this thing was going to work long term, you know? So I held on to it for as long as I possibly could.
How do you feel about the transition now, looking back at it?
Oh, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I should have done it many, many years ago, but being able to, it's just such a cool feeling as an entrepreneur to be able to let go of that security blanket and hone in on something that you've created, and then watch it just exponentially grow as soon as you can devote your full focus to it. And that's something that I was told by other entrepreneurs along the way, and was just really one of those cliche things, but until you actually see it take place, I think like the proof is in the pudding. It does tremendous things for your business.
Amazing. And so at what point did you start sharing your journey on Twitter? Was that from the beginning? Was this just recently?
It was pretty much from the beginning. I think indiehackers.com was really one of the platforms that really pushed me to do this. And so I was already connected within that community. And yeah, I want to say definitely within the first years, when I started sharing just the success that I was having, sharing my numbers, I was pretty much an open book with how I was getting clients and how I was managing the business. And people, I think, just caught on to that.
Do you think that contributed to the growth and success?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. I mean, I contribute my success and growth to Indie Hackers for at least the first 3.5 years. Yeah. That was primarily where I received my clients from, was with.
And by the way, what do you mean to Indie Hackers? Did you do an interview there? Did you share your numbers, or did you what?
No. So I mean, for those that don't know Indie Hackers, it's basically it's a voting sort of forum system where you can, post updates about your company, and others can comment and follow you and whatnot. But yeah, I would just share updates, honestly, about like, hey, this month I reached this MRR goal, or here's how I'm getting clients now, or I found this new hack. Just sharing things much like people share on Twitter, just longer form. So I would share updates. I would say within like once a month or something like that for a while. And every time I did, it was a constant influx of new clients. So it was sort of one of those levers that I could pull whenever I needed to.
Because this as well is a place where entrepreneurs or builders who potentially might hire you are also interacting. So that's interesting. You've been active in communities of potential customers.
Yeah, and that's why I say that when the first 3 years was those that most of my clients didn't have a brand that exists or a website existed, because I was working with these indie hackers, of which I was a part of their community. So yeah, that's why the shift has changed so much in the years, because I've moved away from that and into a higher price point and different clients. But yeah.
Interesting. So one of the things that I saw when reading your updates is that at some point you were scaling very fast and you maybe overwhelmed yourself with too much work, and that you got a little bit of backlash, kind of like maybe you're having too much work and you can't actually provide good service to everybody. Can you talk a little bit about that and what happened and what you've learned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a little bit misconstrued publicly. I had a lot of people talking about it that really didn't know exactly what was going on. So yeah, I did have. I unfortunately I knew it was going to catch up to me eventually. So the one of the risks of running this business solo is that you are the only person that operates it, right? So if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I mean, the business is dead, right? So I know that risk, right? And I accept that risk. But also one of the other risks is getting sick. And so I actually at one point came down with COVID. I don't even remember when it was now. And at the time I was like at the high point of DesignJoy. You know, I was like at a record number of clients, record number of revenue, just doing super, super well. Overwhelmed though. And then on top of everything, I came down with COVID and was out for a couple days. It didn't hit me super duper hard, but like I was super tired afterwards, and it was hard to, once you get behind in this sort of business, when you have so many clients, it's super duper like difficult to get caught back up. And so that's what happened. I didn't have a backup plan or anybody to step in. And so a couple of my clients did experience some delays with getting their requests in. And one of them, you know, rightfully so, took to Twitter and called me out for it. And then all of the skeptics that were following DesignJoy and that were just looking for any amount of proof that this thing was a scam just jumped on it, and it blew up. It went like
you gotta love Twitter for the haters.
Yeah, and like I loved working. It's the funny thing is I loved working with this guy. I thought like everything was good. Like I never heard any negative feedback at all. And I did multiple branding projects, multiple you know, like product designs. And then I see this Twitter thread and I'm like, oh shoot. And yeah, I mean, the natural reaction is to obviously like defend yourself and say, you know, and to jump into the conversation. And it took a lot of discipline not to do that. But I took it as a learning opportunity, and I admitted to my mistakes, made some changes, and ultimately reduced the number of clients that I'm working with. And actually it was the catalyst to get to where I am now, which is still earning a good living, but working way less and having more free time to spend with my family. But yeah, it was a rough patch. It was the first time in those 5 years where my character and my business was called into question over something that, you know, was not as big of a deal as it was made out to be publicly. But it, you know, and I corrected it afterwards with him as well. But yeah, it was a tough patch for sure.
So it sounds like you're intentionally not hiring people and scaling because it kind of sounds like most people or most entrepreneurs or people who are thinking about this as a business who want to either scale, make more money, or reduce the workload and risk on themselves. Sounds like the obvious way to go would be to hire designers, but it sounds like you're very intentional about not doing this. Is this correct? Or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been my plan since day one, and I've surprisingly stuck to it. You know, I look at business a lot differently than I think most entrepreneurs do. I mean, most entrepreneurs, their goal of building a business is to grow it and scale it and hire a team. And you know, those things weren't really the draw to me building my own business. It was more independence. It was more I could do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. You know, I like working with people, but I don't like managing people. I don't like taking on the risk of supplying their livelihood either, and being responsible for that. So yeah, I never had the intention, and still don't have the intention of ever hiring other designers, though I have gone through some periods of time where I really wanted to and really felt like it was the right choice. But it's really hard. It's really, really hard to hire good designers. That's, I think, partly why DesignJoy is so successful. But yeah, it wasn't what I envisioned for my life. So right now, I'm just fine doing what I can do and capping it at that.
Yeah, I highly respect that. I think it's so many people, including perhaps myself, because, you know, I was a designer, loved being a designer. Now, in a way, I'm a manager, which is not where my happy spot is. And again, not that I'm not happy, but I think it's very, you can get confused very quickly with, you know, scaling and wanting to build a business and forget why you started this and how do you actually want to spend your days. So I really appreciate you sticking to this. But how do you then think about things like risk of being sick, wanting to take a vacation every once in a while? How do you plan for that?
Yeah, so I mean, risk of being sick, I mean, it's really just moving numbers around, right? So if I get sick now, I honestly just have to refund clients for that period of time. And you know, it's an expensive day or two of getting sick. But And then vacation too. We took drastic measures to make this happen, but we ended up, I don't have the luxury of taking a vacation unless I wanted to forfeit a lot of revenue, for a week. So we ended up just building a vacation home in my hometown, which we can escape to and like get out of the city. And I can still work and still be normal there, but it at least allows me to get out. And so we have 3 kids too, so we're not going to probably be taking a bunch of vacations anyways, but we don't really take vacation at all.
Fair enough. I mean, I think
at least at this point, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's good to say, look, I'm
but
making trade-offs and this is where I am right now. Right now, this is the business. But do you have kind of like long-term plans? Do you think about what you want to do with this, or like, I don't know. I saw with a few tweets that you were considering about even selling the business, or like, how do you think about the future?
Yeah. The funny thing is I really don't think about the future, at least in terms, I mean, I think about the future in all other aspects of life, but when it comes to my business, I really take it day by day. I don't have this master plan or a business. I don't even have a business plan or a roadmap for DesignJoy. It's just evolved constantly over the years. So, no, I mean, I think I'm going to run this thing as long as I possibly can. I mean, there's been really, really hard points where I just wanted to just destroy it all and to just get a normal 8 to 5 job and get back to a normal life and a normal schedule. And then there's been times where I wanted to sell and had a lot of conversations and just wanted to really for someone else to step in and run it. And then I just sort of in the background, like designing like a madman, but not having to manage the scale and profitability and hiring and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think at right now, I'm just honestly in the mindset of just continuing to do what I do every day and not really thinking about what's next.
Cool. But I mean, you're making fantastic sums of money. I assume that even if you're living decently or even well, you can save a bunch to consider the next phase in life or in business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about it. I mean, if I wasn't making good money, I would definitely need to be more concerned about what the future looks like, but I'm investing heavily. I pretty much invest everything I make. So I'm setting myself up to where the next step will be a little bit easier on me, whatever comes next. Maybe I run DesignJoy for 10 years or another year. I don't know. But yeah, at least financially, I'm just going to ride the wave as long as I can.
Interesting. So if you've mentioned, I think kind of like, I got the vibe that you've mentioned that when you started this like 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't a lot of people offering design subscription. Do you feel that has changed now? Do you feel like it's still valuable? If I was a designer starting up my design or agency or freelancing, is this still a valuable way to stand out?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a 2-part answer. So do I feel like I'm one of the only ones anymore? Definitely not. There's been so many that have popped up, especially since I joined Twitter back in February. There's been a tremendous influx of new subscription services created, but even before that, in the years prior. But that said, I never tell someone just because something else exists out there, you don't have an opportunity to succeed at it. There are plenty of fish in the sea, as the saying goes, and subscription services are still just as attractive. And it's amazing how many companies are blown away that something like that even exists. They had no idea prior. So there's plenty of room for more design subscription services out there. And then the more you can niche down, even better. If you do Webflow, even better. So there's ways to differentiate yourself, but even if you just went at it, just a cliche run-of-the-mill subscription design service, you could probably do just fine.
By the way, when you say Webflow, do you mean you only do the builds for them, or you do both design and builds for them?
There are services out there that do just builds for them, but me personally, I do require a design subscription in order to add on Webflow to it.
Got it. Okay, so it's part of your design subscription. You don't have separate. It's part of the subscription.
Yeah, it's right. My base design plan is $5,000 a month. My Webflow package is an additional $1,000 a month. you can turn it on and off as you need to, right? But if you just hire DesignJoy for Webflow, you're going to be paying for the additional design.
Yeah, got it.
support
No,
either
but
way.
I actually, what interested me was kind of like, what demands do you see in the market? Do people have their own designs and just looking for developers, or do they hire you to do both of them most of the time?
Yeah, both most of the time. So the Webflow is such a huge man. It's in such high demand. I used to have a Webflow package, just a normal subscription, but I had so much interest in it. It was taking so much of my time that I basically like hid it under the counter as an add-on. So it's way less popular now than it was before, but I could have gone full-time Webflow development if I wanted to. But I would say, yeah, it was mostly like people needed design support too. It wasn't, every once in a while, I'll get a client in that's just like, hey, I just need you to build up my website. But rarely is that the case.
Fantastic. Super interesting, Brett. Is there anything else that you think could help people just starting out launching their, business, career, design journey, and trying to learn from, what you've done so far? What would be kind of like one takeaway that perhaps they can implement?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, if you like my big thing now and what I sort of live on is this time to value metric. And that's, I think, why DesignJoy is what it is because I've reduced the amount of time that it takes to actually deliver value to clients. And if you look around at the marketplace at agencies and freelancers, it's very hard to get connected. It's a very long process to get started. And that's why I created DesignJoy as something that can be literally accessed within seconds of needing it and have designs delivered in a couple days. I mean, having that philosophy of reducing that time to value metric, it will automatically help you stand out amongst your peers. I mean, even if you just went about it as a freelancer, but still offered that aspect of it, the clients dig it up. So
I love it. And
that would be
love,
like my
I love that you're applying kind of like product thinking, and because you talk like a lot of startup founders who think about like digital products with time to value and stuff like that, and most times people who are in the service business do not think about how they are doing their services in such framework. So I think this is really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's why it's called a productized service. So it's really taking that product thinking and applying to a service, and it works out really well, and clients love it. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. But yeah, I think that's it.
Fantastic. All right, thanks so much for hanging out with us and sharing some of your wisdom and story, Brett. Appreciate it.
It was fun. Thanks for having me.